crypto token combined with feminine energy redefines blockchain, creating a new economic paradigm and transcends late-stage capitalism. Seeds, it's a new concept we are going to talk about today. It uses cryptocurrency to help people in need around the world. Let's take a look. Rachel Cook is the founder of Seeds. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you, Julia.
We'd like to hear more about what Seeds is and the story behind getting it started.
Sure. I could start with, I'm a former stock trader. I was a futures and equities trader in New York and Chicago for a few years, starting in 2008 when the markets crashed. And at that time, I started buying gold ETFs. So I understood that even when things were crashing, there were ways to figure out how to make money. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I was the only woman and one of the only women or one of the only women everywhere I worked. I was 24 or 25 at the time and wasn't really awake to the fact that misogyny is so pervasive in society. But I saw, point blank that guys that I started with who didn't have the educational background that I had or experience as a profitable trader that I had in one instance were getting paid higher salaries than I was.
You were feeling unfairness.
Yeah, and I hadn't been awake to it before then. Mm-hmm. So I was sitting on the trading desk one night. I was trading the European shift, so it was 3 a.m, and I came across this op-ed in the New York Times about microloans. So for those who are unfamiliar, they're tiny loans typically made to women in the developing world. Mm-hmm. And they can be as small as $4 in some cases. Mm-hmm. And these women who can't get access to capital from traditional financial institutions like banks do so much with this money, and they pay it back 99% of the time in most regions. So I saw this and I was just like, whoa. And at the same time, I was living in Chicago, and I'd gone there because I wanted to do comedy writing and improv at Second City.
So impressive.
Thanks. Anyone can do it, but thank you. And yeah, so I was writing some sketches, and the sketch that I wrote that was sort of the most well received was called Mime Brothel, about a brothel full of mimes. And the joke was that you would think that the prostitute was going to be giving a blowjob or something, but then she'd be trapped in a wind tunnel or picking a daisy. And so it was kind of this abstract feminist thing, and it actually worked well on stage, but like 20 people would see it maybe on a good night. So I also was thinking about ways I could make things that reached a larger audience. And so that night when I read the article in the New York Times about microloans, I thought, and it was just in a flash, like an epiphany I've only had a handful of so far in my life, that what if I made a film about this topic? I would at least be interested in seeing that, and so maybe there'd be some other people that would see it, hopefully more than like 20 people. So I ended up making a documentary exploring micro-lending to women around the world. And we shot in Paraguay, and then in 9 cities in India, and in Kenya, covering what was going on with text message-based money transfer, and then in Detroit. And yeah, through that exploration, particularly what we saw in Kenya, it was just astonishing. I mean, this was 2011, so it was several years ago now. But for those who are unfamiliar, even then, people were sending text messages of money all the time. In 2011, 40% of Kenya's GDP was being sent through text message.
Wow.
Yeah, and so now it's even more prevalent. So I came back to the States and I thought there must be a way to connect that infrastructure, which will probably be in more and more places around the world soon, so that countries like the States, countries that are more developed, could get more capital to women like these women I met who were going gangbusters but just didn't have access to very much money. And so that was how Seeds came together initially. At the same time, this was a little bit after the earthquake in Haiti in I think it was in January 2011. Zynga, the game Farmville, if that's familiar, had done this campaign after the earthquake where they were like, you know, you can spend $2 on
Right,
virtual
yes.
gold.
Yeah.
And if you do that, we'll give that $2 you spent to rebuilding schools in Haiti. And so they did this for like a week. And they found, to their surprise, that people that had never spent any money in the game were suddenly like 60% more likely to start spending when it was going to actually help someone out in real life. And so they discovered that helping people turned out to be the best way to raise their profits, essentially. And Zynga isn't a super philanthropic company, so this isn't something they would have explored if it wasn't working well. I mean, they continued to do it afterward.
Okay.
Yeah, so I wondered if we could build a tool that would do that would have the same effect for games and eventually for other types of apps, except initially we looked at moving that money into making microloans. So we did that for a few years. Seeds incorporated in 2013 with the microlending idea. And over time it evolved so that it wasn't just games, as I said, but became any type of app with in-app purchases enabled, and it can work on websites as well. And then I was also interested in cryptocurrency. You know, it was so hard to raise money from investors. And at one point, it was in 2013, and I was struggling raising money, and I was broke, and I was sleeping on my couch in New York and Airbnb being my bedroom so that I could bootstrap the company without having to find money in another way. And I saw that the feds had just seized a bunch of Bitcoin around that time because Silk Road had been shut down, and the price had dropped. So I started buying it. And going into early 2014, you know, it went up, I think, like 11x. And so I was able to use those funds to pay employees when investors were ignoring me.
Yeah.
And then I made a Litecoin trade at the same time, which went up like 21x. So crypto kind of helped me out. It helped me get around having to go through the traditional means of getting money. And so there was that piece, and then we went through a startup accelerator focusing on Bitcoin in 2014 called Boost VC. It's in San Mateo, California. And I knew that crypto fit in some way. The most obvious way was that we could use it to send money to Kenya without having to deal with a bank or any part of the world. But it just didn't click in yet, but I intuitively understood that it would make sense in some way. So fast forward to 2017 when so many companies were using Ethereum to make their own crypto tokens.
Yes.
It's really easy to do. It's like 27 lines of code. I realized then that was our opportunity to implement cryptocurrency in a way that really made sense within the whole product ecosystem and could be more helpful to people, because instead of just making loans to people, what if we had these tokens and they could redeem a token and tell us what they needed themselves? So instead of doing this kind of like Western kind of condescending thing, I think that often happens where like white people go in and they're like, oh, this is what the people need. And we created a way for them to tell us what they needed without us making assumptions. So now people can redeem the Seeds token and tell us what they need. If you need $1,000 for rent, you could say that. You could redeem the token and tell us that. And we then show that through the apps using our products. People give to you, and then we give you those funds.
This is a great idea. You made it happen.
Thank you.
We have more questions to figure it out for those who are interested in seeds. On your website, you state that so far people have redeemed tokens and been gifted funds for college tuition, to stage one-woman fringe festival shows, to even fill up a tank of gas, and lots more. We'd love to help liberate you from the scarcity paradigm so that you have the freedom to choose the open road. That sounds very exciting and fantastic. Some people will say, oh my God, I found an angel to help me. So would you show us how the process works for people to get this generous help?
So first you need to grab some tokens. if you didn't have any already. If you're comfortable sharing your email right here, then we'll send you 10 tokens for free, so you can make 10 requests for help if you'd like to. Once you have a token, you just go to the site and click on Ask for Help. And then it's just a simple form that pops up. It's 9 questions. I won't walk you through all of it here, but you tell us what you need, how much money you're requesting, and that's essentially it. You send the token then to activate the request. And then once you're in our system and your request for help is active, this gives you a sense of what it actually looks like within an app. So this is an app, a productivity app called Habitica. One of our partners, they're lovely. I highly recommend using this app independent of the fact that Seeds is in the app. But to give you a sense of how it looks, so you're using an app, this would auto trigger in a live demo. But the Seeds, it's called an interstitial, pops up kind of like an ad would pop up. And it lets you know that if you buy this in-app item, you're simultaneously going to help someone in need. And you can click and see a picture of somebody, the person that you would be contributing to if you make this purchase. For instance, you know, in that example, if you need $1,000 for rent, you would pop up here. Your story would be here. If you're not comfortable sharing your name, that's okay. Sometimes we get sensitive requests, but the need itself would be shown here. And then the user of the app just goes through and makes the purchase, just as you would any other type of purchase. You can share on social media if you want. And that's it. And we've been in, I think, 31 apps so far. We're doing a big push going into the holidays to get another 50 app partners on board. The dream is that eventually this will be at every point of purchase, so that little kids in the future take it for granted that, of course, they would give $1 to help somebody out anytime they're buying.
How does cryptocurrency come into play with the Seeds?
Sure. The cryptocurrency is what gives you access to the system initially. So that's what you use to make the request. That's what you redeem to make the request.
Okay, got it. So 3 quick questions. How many people so far have received funding?
Oh, off the top of my head, it's less than 100 still. Maybe it's probably less than 75. I'm sorry, I don't have that number off the top of my head. But yeah.
Where are they mostly located?
Sure, they've been all over the world. We've tried to be somewhat proactive in terms of intentionally going into certain geographies. So because I had some connections in Kenya, we've been able to connect with some people there since who have received gifts. There's a community in South Sudan that found out about us, and that was really beautiful because what I had hoped would happen happened in that we granted a request for a guy who wanted $500 to start a hygiene stall business at the local university in Juba, South Sudan. And once it worked, he then told his community. So since then, we've granted a request for funds to build a playground nearby that area. A woman wanted to start a sewing business, and so we got her funds as well. So we wanted to kind of find these pockets of people who through word of mouth would tell their communities, so we could engage and create these digital communities. But we've done stuff in the States. There was a girl in Pakistan who asked for $100 to throw her mom a birthday party. So it's kind of been all over the place. I mean,
for all different kinds of things.
For all different kinds of things.
What are the biggest and smallest amounts received?
Sure. So the biggest to date has only been $2,200, but
$2,200.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
Yeah, it took a long time, and as we grow, the hope is that it'll be faster and we can help more people more quickly as the network grows. But yeah, $2,200, so a guy could buy a new sort of like fancy computing system. This is a guy in the States. I think the smallest, I mean, there have been people that have done like $1 to test it out. But I think the smallest was one that you had mentioned earlier, which was $30 to fill up a tank of gas.
How do you screen for fraudulent requests in your system?
Yeah, good question. So we're not doing that. The assumption we're working on right now is that because, hopefully this doesn't sound, if this becomes a problem in the future, we'll have to deal with it at that time. But what I'm doing now and the philosophy I'm approaching this with is just trusting that because the intention behind this is pure, that it's going to link up with people who are also kind of on that wavelength. So we're not screening them. We're operating under the assumption that if you're given a gift, it's yours. So we're not going to check in to make sure that you actually use the $30 to fill up your gas tank. We're just giving you the funds and trusting you. And yeah, I mean, I'm not sure, this is sort of a side conversation. I don't know what I think about the responsibility of platforms for the behavior of people engaging with them. But that's something I've been kind of thinking more about.
But currently all based on trust.
It is, yeah, and we haven't had any problems so far.
Okay.
I mean, if somebody uses it to like buy a gun or something, we would have to cross that bridge when we came to it. But yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about this in terms of we're hoping to transcend the sort of scarcity, zero-sum based economic system as it is now. You know, like when I was a stock trader, if I made $1, somebody lost that dollar, and it was that simple. It's all supply and demand. And our thing creates more money for everyone involved. So the apps make more money, we get a cut, and then we're giving these gifts. So it's a new thing, and aligned with that, I'm kind of thinking that we're moving into a future, I hope we are, but I really feel like there's evidence, especially young people. They really want to help. They want opportunities to help, and if it's in front of them in an app they're already engaging with, they're totally going to do it. They're very likely to do it. And so are older people. All people are. So yeah, I hope that we're on trend with something that's going to be more and more prevalent in the future, this sort of social good being baked into what people are engaging with every day.
So what's the key factor that differentiates seeds from crowdfunding?
Good question. It is, when I'm trying to describe what it is succinctly in a sentence, I'll say that it's sort of like a distributed GoFundMe, except that in the sense that GoFundMe is a silo, it's just a web page. Our thing is distributed across many apps at many points of purchase. So I guess it's different. This is sort of a visual answer. It's not a single one-dimensional thing, it's sort of multi-dimensional. If that sounds too trippy for you, it is like crowdfunding, but it's more present and accessible, I suppose, or the hope is that it will be, because it's at every point of purchase or at many points of purchase. Yeah, so it's sort of, I mean, if crowdfunding didn't exist, I don't know that token sales would necessarily, I think they all sort of influence one another in a certain way. So maybe it's a sort of iteration of crowdfunding in a way.
Why are you operating Seeds as a for-profit versus a non-profit entity?
Good question. Relating to the zero-sum thing, the ones and zeros idea, all or nothing, I think the reason we have for-profit or non-profit and that's it is, you know, in the States at least, it exists for tax purposes that are 70 years old. So our thing makes everyone involved more money while doing social good at the same time. So it made more sense for it to be a for-profit thing, but I kind of want to get around this idea that it's an either or. I want people to think about it as though it should be integrated. A lot of brokenness, a lot of...
So Rachel, 2018 is the first year for Seeds to make a profit. How did you accomplish that?
It was a winding road, a lot of brokenness, a lot of money struggles. Man, I don't even really know how to answer that well. And that I think anyone who's ever started something, any creator, understands that you're often spending time. You have the idea and you can sense it's going to work in some way, but you can't see the entire shape of it. And through trial and error and through actually engaging with other people who are into what you're doing, you can hone in on specifically what it needs to be. And so that took us about 5 years to do, which is, you know, fairly typical for startups. But yeah, it was just through that process, we got to a point where it was like, okay, this is product market fit. This is a thing that people are using.
Your vision is to create a bigger pie for all.
Yes.
So who are those all, and who are those win-win-win parties, as you mentioned on your website?
Sure. I mean, the way I think about it is we're kind of trapped in this scarcity paradigm, this zero-sum system that convinces us that it makes us defensive and filled with fear. That idea of, you know, markets and me making $1 because somebody lost that dollar or vice versa, it makes people convinced that they have to really hold on to what they have. But it's manufactured, it's made up. Like, I was trading euro-dollar futures, which is, you know, what people thought the relationship between the euro and the dollar would be in 3, 6, or 9 months. It was so made up. It's so much more made up than digital currency, cryptocurrency. So I just want to get beyond this sort of manufactured thing that I think it's been impressed upon us without our consent. And then we think we have to take jobs that fit us into this system. We think we have to learn skills to fit into that system instead of learning to really listen to ourselves, to develop and offer what we're uniquely here to give. So I think I'm so fortunate because I didn't have a kid at 19 or something. I was okay with being that broke, and I didn't have other financial responsibilities that prevented me from sleeping on my couch and Airbnb being my room to work on this.
You're lucky.
Yeah, I am. I'm so lucky. And so many people don't have that opportunity because they're born into financial circumstances that make that impossible. So I'm imagining a world where, like, what if you could use a Seeds token to ask for 3 months of living expenses, to just really, to meditate, to spend time with yourself, to understand what you are going to offer, and then to start actually working on that. I think that, I mean, I've been able to employ 30-ish people because of this thing that I made up that's probably a better fit for me than anything somebody else could have made up that I tried to do. And if more people have that opportunity, it's going to make more value for everyone. So yeah, man, I just want us to get out of this kind of thing we're stuck in, this weird matrix that isn't really serving us and doesn't really work very well. You know, people who live in rich countries that have many things, sometimes you still might be stuck and you just need a little help. So I also hope that we can help people get beyond the idea that they shouldn't be asking for help in certain cases. So it really is for everybody. It's about creating this new system that will sort of nurture us more so and make more money for all involved.
Is it true if you give someone a bigger slice of pie, that means someone else will have a smaller slice of pie?
Yeah, that's the assumption, right? That's what I think this zero-sum system convinces us is the case. And I mean, of course, there are certain resources that are finite. There's only so much, I don't know, coal on Earth or whatever. But money is not scarce. Money is just a thing that man made up. So it's just moves in strange ways because of these sort of gatekeepers and the way it's been designed, the way the system's been designed to date. So yeah, man, I mean, in certain cases that would be true, but for the most part, as far as money is concerned, no.
You have been nomadic for several years while working in Kenya to get seeds straight up on the ground. You even once spent the night in Nairobi jail. We believe there have been many obstacles, hardships, efforts in your journey of creating and growing seeds. Why are you so passionate about seeds?
Thank you for saying that. I think it's the time. I think I felt so neglected by the system myself, and I'm a white, straight woman born in the States. So many more people have experienced similar or worse situations because of it. I just want it to exist, and it didn't exist. So I think, like, you know, any creator, I thought I'd try to make it. Yeah, I think that's why.
Feeling unfairness as a woman in your previous job is part of your motivation for creating seeds. How will seeds change the gender bias within our system?
Sure. So the way I think about it now is in terms of feminine and masculine energy, and I think people of all genders have both. But this system has taught us to overvalue the masculine stereotypical things like fighting things out and winning and going forward, and to undervalue the feminine, which is, I think, more about being and looking internally. So Seeds, I think, is trying to have a healthy balance of the masculine and feminine rather than perpetuating this imbalance. It's trying to nurture, it's growing outward in sort of not a linear way so much as sort of like a bigger pie way. I hope we can embody that idea of a balance, and then if we're as successful as I hope that we will be, maybe other people will try to emulate that.
We look forward to that. Seeds was incorporated in 2013. It's the Bitcoin-focused startup accelerator. It also went through TechStarts in New York City in 2015 and competed in TechCrunch, Disrupt Battlefield, in 2016. What do you see for the future of seats?
I don't think we'll need to go through any more startup accelerators or competitions. Those were helpful, especially TechCrunch Disrupt, but they give you money, they invest in you, and we needed money. I mean, in the future, my big dream, I'll just put this out there, is to connect with someone like Oprah, a high net worth, visible person, particularly someone who's very influential in groups of women and women of color, to let women in particular know that this tool exists and that they can use it to try and get out of this thing we're locked into. So my dream is that we'll just keep going forward, we'll continue to grow, and then eventually we'll reach a stage where we can kind of connect with people like that who can really kind of disperse the tokens. Yeah, we want it to be as many places as it can be.